Welcome back to another episode of Making Our Way. Today, I'm joined by Bill Barton, a dad who has a beautiful story that is going to carry us through the beauty, the joy, and sometimes the heartache of fatherhood, including an unexpected diagnosis and his own path in learning how to lean into really being present. In this episode, Bill's going to share the weight of watching the people he loves carry the pain that he can't remove for them, and the moments that he realized that love was not about solutions, but in addition, the powerful ways that joy still shows up in their family. Bill, it's so good to have you here. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about fatherhood, which is exciting for me because I'm not a father. So this is I think for all the fathers, but just for parents, for people who love someone, who feel a deep sense of love. So let's start at the beginning for you. When you first learned you were going to be a dad, what did you picture?
Oh, and it's funny. I can remember the exact moment when Marcy had shared that we're expecting. And we had a beautiful moment in embrace, of course, and in that moment. And then she had to leave, and I had a few moments before I had to head out. And I grabbed my journal, and I wrote these words, and that's what's so clear yet to this day. And that is, I feel like my capacity for joy has expanded. And that was such a wild thing to put words to, but amazing to feel.
So when you knew you were going to be a dad, you said my capacity for joy has expanded. What did that look like when fatherhood really began with the birth of your first child?
Yes, so Sydney, it's our first, and she's now 17. But all those years ago, as you are pregnant, and then that awesome moment of meeting your baby for the first time, which is, it's hard to even put words to that, how incredible that is. And then later, as you see your heart literally walking around on two legs, and the sheer joy and delight, and also getting to know her personality and seeing that shine through was amazing. So to have, and it's funny, it's the hardest job, but the most rewarding. I'm not sure what other job description you would put up with the nights to begin with, and the lack of sleep, and being excited over finally getting 2 hours of sleep. But it's all worth it. It's so good.
So then baby number 2.
Yes. And that was an exciting time as well. And you have that first experience where you realize you can love doubly. and that's a neat thing to experience as well, as you're holding the new baby and realizing there's space in your heart for this, and just the overwhelming feelings of love and joy that are bubbling over. And again, at the same time, you're dealing with lack of sleep and changing dirty diapers, and you wouldn't have it any other way. and also chasing around a toddler at the same time. So we've got some really great photos at the beginning, and Sydney's just beaming, holding Lucas. And in fact, I saw it just within the last 24 hours, and it stopped me in my tracks. And it was so good to have that moment of being stopped in my tracks and feeling those feels all over again, and just seeing the joy beaming out of her little countenance.
It's funny, you just brought up a little memory for me. I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and I used to ask my mom, how did you have the capacity and enough to go around for all of us? And she said, when you have additional children, you don't divide your love multiplies. And there's always enough to go around, which I felt especially comforted by that because I'm the youngest of 6. So I would have been at the tail end of the tank running out. But that's not the case. So you had your 2 beautiful children, and did you have a vision of what your life would look like now, what fatherhood would look like, and all the things you thought were going to be?
Yes, and it's funny. Mars and I had even would just daydream before we had kids. And as we were married, and just thinking about what it would be like, and some of the very simple moments of having car seats in the back of our cars. We'd drive around and we'd think, how would that be wild, to have 2 little ones, and then we would think of the holidays and the different events, and to share those moments with our kids. And then the little activities and being caught up in. And so you have this thought in your mind of what it will be. And as we all know, as life even happens before the diagnosis, things ebb and flow. But nevertheless, you're holding on to the elements, and it's never, it's not a bad thing. It was wonderful as you see what they're into, and uh, the different experiences that they have and the things they're gravitating towards, and jumping along, joining the ride at that point. And it's funny how very much it did play into a lot of what our daydreaming had looked like as we were envisioning what we would want to have for our family.
Yeah. So at some point, um, things started to shift and change, and you had suspicions that something was up. Um, what was the moment or the moments that you realized something that wasn't in your plan was afoot, and something was truly genuinely wrong? Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. And in that, I had thought, well, we've gotten through the birth and had great, healthy kids and good, good experience in birth. Where I guess that means a little more to me. I should share. Both my self and my sister had some challenging birth stories, and my brother also had a son with a challenging birth. And so, for me, I was very focused on that and prayed towards that. And as we went through those moments, and everything had gone well, I thought, this is great. We've made it through that. And at the time, as you know, when we were starting to see things, it was actually when Lucas was 5. So by that time, we've done a lot of life, and we've got our family of 4 as we out and about doing things. And in all reality, it was Marcy, my wife, noting the differences in her background is physical therapy. So she was seeing things differently. To me, knowing that kids are different and how they develop, and I wasn't seeing as much. And as she had seen things and then went to his pediatrician and noted those as well, they said, yeah, we're seeing that, and we'll get some tests done and get him in physical therapy. And I ended up taking him to one of his appointments, one of the first appointments. It wasn't the very first one. Marcy, I was tied up and wasn't able to. And so I was actually excited to take him to his second appointment. But it was there that it really hit me when it was just something as simple as he had his workarounds. And I was a very engaged dad, and when it came to being out on the playground, I was right there with him, and we were going up the ladders and going down the slides and doing the things. And he had to do a lot of those things in his therapy appointment, except they forced him to use this leg versus that leg and step this way, and force him into what were, quite honestly, just awkward movements. And that was hard to see. And that was me seeing it really for the first time, where I didn't realize how much he did have his little ways around it, as well as he's 5. At that time, I would scoop him up and help him along. And I was masking things as well and not realizing it. And again, just thinking if there was something, it was normal, kids developing at different times.
So so you're already seeing compensations. So when you say workarounds, Lucas was able to figure out how to still do some things on the playground or on a piece of climbing equipment. But that was an alarm bell to a physical therapist, or that was, something that, dare we say, wasn't, in the normal milestone, good progression of growth and development. Um, and when did it get more serious for you? And did you get more information?
And it was right during that time, along with the referral to physical therapy, was a blood draw. And they said, oh, we'll just do for what it's worth kind of thing. And so wasn't throwing alarm bells at that point, but we were glad to have it done. And of course, no kid ever likes getting poked. And so that was an experience in itself. And getting through that, and at the same time, not really dreading the results, not knowing that there would be anything too impactful to come from it, but along for it and glad that he was being checked out and felt good about our doctor and care, or his doctor. And that's, it was the big part of this, is we received the test results, and Marcy was looking through them and had recognized the typical battery of blood thing. I don't even know what they look for, but whatever that is. And she brought it to me, though. I was in the kitchen, and she had the piece of paper in her hand. She says, "We got this back, but I don't know what this one is." And when I looked it up, it looks like it's higher than what the range should be. And I said, in my amazing wisdom, "What did the pediatrician say?" And at that time, she said nothing. And I thought, great, no news is good news, which was not the case. But thankfully, Marcy followed up with the pediatrician's office just to get their take on it. And we hadn't heard, and so wanted to know if it was anything. And the response on the other end of the phone was, "Oh, we haven't got that back." And so it was just a complete oversight. Whereas if they had gotten it, they would have reached out. And then when they did see it, had Marcy come back in with Lucas. And even the way it was phrased, and to their credit, did a good job, but almost too good of a job, because that would have been an appointment I would have been to. And I was working the day that was going on, and I knew that Marcy was taking him to the pediatrician. And it wasn't until I heard them in the driveway that I realized I didn't get that call on the way home. "Oh, it's fine," or "Here, it's this." And I heard them come in and heard Marcy get him set, distracted in front of the TV. And then she came in to my office, home office, to tell me what they had said. And that's when things got a lot more serious, or our understanding of things.
Bill, what did they say? What did they tell Marcy?
They had seen this just one or two other times. And it had been muscular dystrophy. And they referred us to the local children's hospital, which we were glad to have a good local children's hospital, but never thought we would need a referral to a good local children's hospital. And even in that moment, just the sense of, okay, there is something here, and it was serious when it was seen before, not knowing that that's what we were 100% up against. In fact, we were still very hopeful. But at that time, I remember, boy, it's funny how that even comes, but just remember the weight of that, the what if, and the possibility of something. And again, after feeling like, oh, we had gotten out, through the birth stage, we're good. And to have that, the second thing that fired in my mind and heart was for our family, and just acknowledged out loud together to say, marriages with kids with special needs get more complicated, and let's acknowledge that on the front end of this as we go into it. And I remember we stood and prayed about that specifically, as well as just the unknown as we were getting that referral.
I think that is an incredible amount of presence to be able to acknowledge that things are shifting, and as was, what you and Marcy did together is you prayed about it immediately, right there in that moment. So that was what you did together as a couple. As a dad, though, just as Bill, standing there side by side, getting this diagnosis, do you remember what you felt in your gut? Like, do you remember what your body was telling you? Do you remember what you thought? What was going on for you as a dad?
There was a couple of very strong threads in that. And one is the part where you're realizing you want it to be made up. It's not. It's that realizing of, we are dealing with something. And yet I was optimistic, to be hopeful that, we'll find out what it is, but not ever thinking fully that it would be what it was. And then the other part in my head, and so as soon as Marcy had stepped away, this third part was, I didn't know. I didn't know what this muscular dystrophy thing was. I mean, I heard the term. I knew of the Jerry Lewis, the telethon, but I didn't know what that meant. And so I did the thing. I popped open Google and typed in and hit enter. And I didn't even have to click on a link. It had 3 bullet points up at the top. And I read the first one, which was no cure. And that was hard as a dad, as someone that wants to feel like, maybe if I can't fix it, but we can get a medical help that can. And so to have that hit me before I knew the rest of the list even. But even still thinking, okay, we're we live in a great time, and we're in a good area and next to a good hospital, that kind of thing. And then the second part on the list was lose the ability to walk preteen. And that I was not prepared to read that. I was so naive. I is admitted that I didn't know what it meant, and I was still not thinking that gravity. And as that was a leveling down, and I'm glad it was in private. Like, I'm just standing there as I'm taking this in, and I had just had this anchoring moment with Marcy, but at the same time, you feel so disoriented. And as I'm reading through this and processing, and then feeling very helpless also, and then the third one is the one we all know. It's as far as what Google was serving up historical at that time, is passing in their 20s. And I stopped. I did not allow myself to click anything more. My heart couldn't take any more at that moment anyway. And I was literally reeling from those 3 bullet points. So it was a very healthy thing at that time to stop and just follow the path forward, but without clicking.
Thank you for sharing that, Bill. I think it's so important. I mean, we know, in a lot of ways, men and women process these things differently, mothers and fathers, and I think your openness as a dad is really, really powerful. Yeah, it gave me goosebumps when you mentioned, the blood draw and the PT, and I went through similar things where you just kind of, it's like one little baby moment at a time, and suddenly it's a cumulative thing, and suddenly it results in this diagnosis that it's very difficult to wrap your head around. And for you, when that moment came, and you're talking about Googling it, like the floor dropped out of what you thought life would look like, your fatherhood, like that vision, that story you'd written for yourself, your family, would no longer be the one that you were going to live. How do you wrestle with that? What did you do next? Well, how do you literally and figuratively, like, how do you get out of bed the next day? What was that for you?
That was, and it's not as vivid, that next step, but I remember the heart sense from it. And it's what was true for the next little while. And that is, okay, whatever this is, we're going to face. And with Marcy's background in physical therapy, I felt like, okay, there's something there that we can leverage and lean on. And my upbringing, my family, meaning my sister, was handicapped. And I remember my folks did such a good job of just, this is life and here we go. And we're going to face this and do the best we can at every step, and made it normal. As funny as that phrase maybe sounds, but to have a posture of forward, and whatever it took, and the fortitude, I'm so grateful for that background. And as we were walking through it, it wasn't easy, and it was very emotional. I remember just being paper thin emotionally. but always with the right, hopefully, the right orientation. And as you know, it's just such a loaded time in those first few days and weeks of diagnosis, or even the process. We hadn't gotten the official diagnosis yet.
It sounds like what you're saying is you had a little bit of a plan. You were able to kind of bounce a little bit and say, okay, this is what it is. We're going to move forward. Um, but it didn't stop there for you, and I always say when you get a diagnosis like Duchenne, we should get a free pass on everything else in life. Like there should never be anything else heavy to carry. But your heaviness, what your family was carrying, was multiplied from by 3, from 1 to 3. Will you just tell us a little bit about that and what happened next with Sydney?
Yes, and at the time, this was all new education to us. And even stepping back for as we lead into this, 2 years prior, my dad had passed away unexpectedly of cancer. And then the year prior, my brother had passed away. Those are two heavy things in their own right. And then to have Lucas's diagnosis in our family, it was progressively hitting consecutive circles closer to home. And then, as you brought up, we didn't know anything about Duchenne in our family before, and so we had to learn. And it was through that learning that we found out how you can get Duchenne in 3 different ways. And one is an anomaly in the DNA of the boy. The other is in the mother's eggs and the mom's okay. Or third, that it's in her DNA. And so there's a term called manifesting carrier. And we had never heard that term before. And so all of a sudden we were introduced to Duchenne for Lucas and went through that process and did the DNA testing and had that confirmed. And that was a thing in its own right. And then Marcy went through her test following that and learned that she was a manifesting carrier. And that was really close together with the diagnosis to then discovering. And there's a term, at least we've used, and that is mom guilt. And it's the toughest thing to see your wife go through, where in her head, meaning too, she knows that there's nothing she could have done, but it does not change the grief and guilt that comes as a result. And as a husband, that's hard to see. And so to be dealing with that, and then it was in 21, I'm losing track of how many years as it went across the time span there, but that we learned the week of Christmas, or week leading up to Christmas, that Sydney, our daughter, was also a manifesting carrier. And that doubled down on a lot of feels, as you can imagine.
I was going to say I understand, but what I really want to tell you is I can't understand that. It's unimaginable, and thank you for sharing it. If Bill, if it's not too invasive of me to ask this, because I do think your story is really well, it's just well expressed when you share some of the details. And I don't want to be invasive, but I do want to ask you if there's, when you say manifesting carrier, so I have a grasp of that, I understand it, but for somebody who may not understand that, so we have Lucas diagnosed with Duchenne. So you did the Googling, you read up on what's going to happen. When we talk about manifesting carriers in females, and a mother who is a carrier and a daughter who is a carrier, what is that? What does it look like to manifest as a carrier of Duchenne?
And that is something that, of course, we're learning about, and in our learning about it, finding out this is pretty fresh and new in the scientific world, to understand what it means. And I'm so grateful that they're finding out what that means, but it's wild just in this time. And so as we're learning, that it's a sliding scale of what this will mean for the moms, and in this case, affected daughters, where they'll have their own issues and with cardiac. And so Marcy sees a cardiologist, and we're getting Sydney into. In fact, she was part of a trial, and that's how fresh and new this is. Is they're trying to understand what this means for carriers, and at a convention this year, learning some of the results from some of the findings. It's really wild in the way of how it affects the muscles, and it's different than even how it affects the boys. And yet, there's the issue with the heart that they have to worry about. And for Sydney specifically, and you know her, she has such a brightness to her, and her thing was dance. She loved dance, and we supported that and loved seeing her thrive in that. And she had taken herself out of dance due to muscle issues. And so when it came to knowing that she had it, it wasn't a surprise, but it hurt. And even Marcy, as she back in school ran track, so she was able to be athletic, but at the same time, she always felt like she paid for it more. And it makes sense as we look back, and now knowing what this means for Sydney now.
So if we think about this, I want to stay in the conversation about fatherhood and about you and what this meant for you. So we have a difficult, devastating, catastrophic diagnosis for Lucas, and then follow-on diagnoses for Marcy and for your daughter Sydney. And as the dad, you're carrying this silent, emotional labor.
Yes.
How do you do that as a dad?
It There's layers to that, and as taking it on, and I think like any dad would want, you you try to take that and carry it and be strong for the family, and it's something you don't want anyone in your family to have to deal with. And we were seeing it in ways of, and I share this very respectfully, and I believe there'll be an understanding, where with the different elements of, again, what we've affectionately called mom guilt, it was to the point where Marcy wasn't able to, at the time, go to some of the different doctor's appointments, and we travel out of state for that. And so, but no problem, taking that on, going to those, and those are heavy appointment days, and it's different when people are not familiar with what a clinic day means. They think, oh, you go to the doctor, like one appointment. It's all day. You pack your lunch. We say we see all the ologists, because you do, and you're grateful for it. But those are heavy conversations at each one of those, and to be shouldering that alone, and even with two of us is that too. But just from the standpoint of being the dad and weathering it and trying to carry that, it's a lot. And I had to learn something about myself in that I was doing it very dutifully, and I thought I was doing a very good job. But I did not realize how much it was weighing on me, and I was pushing things down, again, thinking I'm doing the right thing, to the point where it affected me more than I ever realized. And it was something I had to realize almost outside myself, of how much it had changed me and how I was operating as a dad, as a husband. And you just don't realize it as you're going through that time. And that doesn't help when you think you're doing a great job. You have a little disillusionment in the whole bit too. But
How do you how do you find support, Bill? What's your community or your support system, or how do you, when you find yourself in that place where you say, wow, this is heavy? I think, that is the first step, is you acknowledge it, and then you realize it's chipping away, it's changing you. um how did you tackle it? Because I know you did. again, without without prying, but just in a general sense, how do you grapple with that? Because let me say this, like, you've got your wife is a carrier. She's got the mom guilt of being a carrier, and Luke is having this disease. Your daughter's a carrier. There is a whole lot going on here. And when we talk about how do you take care of yourself, I think even just, I am a caregiver to my son. I'm his mom. First of all, I just want to be his mom. I want to be his caregiver. I'm his full-time caregiver. Sometimes it's just like, how do you take care of yourself? How do you tackle what you know needs to be tackled, but you're not quite sure there's enough left to do that? Um, what did you, how did you do it? What did you do?
And I don't mind sharing it all. And it starts even back in the way of my normal state is very optimistic and very outgoing and very happy, genuinely so, and seeing the joy in things in life. So much so where even as silly as a high school nickname was Billy Sunshine, and it was the happiest guy they ever met, and it was true, and that's who my wife met. That's when we connected. In fact, we were young. Young when we met, we've been together now. We celebrate our dating anniversary. We just celebrated this year our 29-year dating anniversary. And so back a long time. And so she knew me in those years. And that's who she fell in love with. And that's who she married and started a family with. And that's who I really saw myself as well. And it was going through this and seeing how it was changing me uh, to to see and address the pushed down part of me and becoming bitter in ways that I did not realize. And that was hard to see. Uh, but in that, I realized there's a lot here, but I want to do it justice and also not take a ton of time. Uh, but in the process of going through that, I'm sure you've heard these term or this phrase before where people will say, well, God won't give you more than you can handle. I'm here to tell you that's not exactly the truth. And you absolutely get given more than you can handle. And I had to realize that and that it was okay. And to seek help and to, frankly, get counseling and to have friends and family come alongside meant the world and means the world. It's still to this day. And in fact, we can talk a little more going forward here, but in the way of just a true genuine rather, community and how important that is, because you can't do it on your own. And it's humbling. And as a dad and as a provider, I want to feel like I can do all these things. I can't. And to be real with myself, because I realized that all of this, I was lying to me first, and to have help through that. And also, this ties into another thread of just the humbling yourself to accept help. And it's an amazing blessing when people do, but at the same time, it's such a funny thing to say of how hard that was to receive, and sometimes still is.
Thank you for your generosity in sharing that. And also, I think just, gosh, a beautiful public service announcement about, we don't have to do everything alone. We are, I think we're so programmed to be individualistic and I can handle it. And in putting up these veneers and these facades of, I got it. And we don't got it, and we talk about the idea of community, and community can look different. It might be one friend, it might be one therapist, it might be one spiritual advisor, it might be a neighbor. But I don't think we were meant to do any of life alone. I think we're meant to be pack animals where we gather together, we take care of each other. And I so appreciate you mentioning counseling. Because when Joseph was diagnosed, I remember almost immediately the first day, the first couple of days, I was like, I am going to need a good therapist. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I was just adrift. And I think in tandem to that, it's like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a parent in this rare disease realm. And at the same time, that hope of like, well, how do I take care of him and how do I fix it? Can I fix this? I want to make this go away. Like, I kept thinking, if I was in Vegas, I would fold. I'd be like, I don't want this hand. I'd like another. Let me move to a different table. I'd like another hand dealt to me, please. But that's not how life is. And I think the biggest piece for me is that we have to acknowledge, like, I can't necessarily fix this. Um, was there a moment for you when you realized, like, I can't make this go away? I cannot fix this for my family.
Yes, in the way of when you realize it's what you have and what's in front of you. And the other part of this, and as you know, it's an onion that gets getting on the layers peeled back, which doesn't help, side note, in the way that at every appointment and at every step when it's progressive disease, that you're learning something new every time and having to very real, to accept it, but also realize, not that it's easy, but to champion it in the way of what can I control? Be real about that.
Mm,
And the things that you
yep.
can't, really give that up. And however, in prayer and, just in the way of, I can't handle this, and acknowledging that you need help in those areas and to continue on. And it's something very real through this has been gratitude, as odd as it sounds. And that is, I've said before, in these dark times, and by the way, in these times, I don't even blame, and I understand, and I've had my own moments of where if you focused on the negative, it would absolutely screw you to the floor. And it has to be so intentional. I mean, and you need to acknowledge those things. So I'm not saying, sweep that under. And so having help and counseling is very important. But also the orientation of gratitude. In these dark times, these little bright lights shine so bright, and it's so great. And as you can have a chance to step back and see them and acknowledge them, and I'm so grateful for, on so many levels, the different things, and whether it's people in our family, our friends, our communities we noted, the care, there's so many good things. And that's something in balance has been very helpful to, to acknowledge, but to hold both at the same time.
Bill, what did you have to let go of?
Mm.
What did you have to release in order to move forward?
The sense that I could take care of it all. And that was a big part of it, as well as you want to. Like, you want to take care of it for Lucas and for Marcy and for Sydney and for our family. And that's not easy. And then the other part is embracing what is. And that's where, in fact, one of my words for the year, previously was micro moments. There's so many beautiful things that are happening. And just to be reminded of that, yes, these other parts that we're dealing with are tough. And of course, people have it better, people have it worse. So it's not about the comparison game, but to have for ourselves, for myself as well, to stop and be present. And I can't tell you the joy it brings me in these moments to see that sparkle in Lucas's eyes, or Marcy or Sydney's, but just there's so many things in our life I affectionately say, you get daily blinders to. And especially when things are tough, it's easier when things are, going great. But when they're not, it's even more important to stop and see these. And there's such beautiful things happening in our lives, and to be able to embrace them.
Tell me something. Tell me one of those beautiful things. What comes to mind for you?
And it's only because it was the most recent, and I'm sure there's others that are more impactful, but I happened to be walking through the living room where Lucas was, and I stopped intentionally just to take in the scene as he's sitting there. And whatever he was watching, it tickled him. And he just started giggling from his toes. And I thought, I am so glad I'm standing here in this moment seeing that, because there's nothing
Yeah.
more that any parent wants than to have joy for their kids. And
Yeah.
had I been just a few seconds more, if I just plowed through, I would have been out of earshot or eye shot there. And it did my heart good, especially in that moment. Uh, it's funny how things that can be so innocently stated, it's the things that are otherwise good can be tender. And I'd had something like that earlier that day as we were just facing, the reality of things. And so to have that joy-filled moment of him just gleefully giggling was a beautiful treasure for me to lock away. And that was a micro moment that I'm so grateful very recently, in the last 24 hours, in fact.
Gosh, I got to say, Bill, that is a level of being present that I don't think a lot of people have honed that awareness and that skill. When we talk about the idea of not being able to fix things, so, being solution oriented, I'm going to fix this, and then having to let go of things, but then embracing those micro moments and finding joy. Um, how do you hold on to that when times are tough? Like how do you continue on that path when you're faced with mounting physical needs or medical bills or just attacks on your time? Like how do you lean into that joy and really being in this moment?
Yeah, that's one of those all the aboves, right? All those things going on all the time. Uh, there's been a th- uh, few parts that have helped just in the daily part of it. In the morning, for me, I enjoy making a pour over coffee, so it's a little slower, a little more intentional, and it's just me in the morning. And, well, me and the dog. We've got a golden retriever, Scout, and having a time to orient at the beginning of the day. We've got a plaque, a couple different ones throughout the house that talk about gratitude, and it's a start each day with gratitude. And having coffee and just having a time for devotions and reflection. When you let yourself think through and start think about the positive, even if it's tender, like I'm realizing there's been areas where we've received help that was I had no idea was in the works, and then to receive it is such a humbling, amazing thing, and to be so thankful for those that come to mind that way, as well as the different elements throughout our days, almost like in the same way of the micro moments, just the so many things to be grateful for that we either take for granted, and I'm guilty of that too, as well as uh, the small moments. They add up, and it's great to and I in addition to moments to people, and I'm so grateful for the relationships that are in our lives. And in fact, it was through the time of losing my dad and my brother and Lucas's diagnosis you really realize what a gift it is to have these relationships, and with those people that I mentioned as far as loss, but also in those moments the people that came around us and continue to out of the woodwork sometimes. It's just incredible.
It makes me think about your community and how people have shown up for you and the support you have. What would you say, Bill, to other fathers who maybe aren't as open and vulnerable as you are, and really sharing truly their feelings and their heart, and what tips would you give them? What kind of advice would you give to other people?
It's not always easy uh, to receive the help, but to accept it, first of all, and again, it's not easy. The other part is to seek out actually, and so this, it's a point that's on the front end, maybe easy to dismiss because it doesn't sound like it'll be a lot of fun at all. And that is to truly seek out others that have gone through what you're going through. And that's something now, as we've gone through things, I am so grateful for those that have gone before us and that have connected and been there. And I, in turn, want to do that for others. And there's a good part of both of that is very helpful for someone that maybe that is not their natural to be outgoing or to be open, but to receive that from someone else and then in turn to give. On both sides of that, there's a reward. And also, in reaching out or being open to those, I guess there's two parts. One would be reaching out. The other is if there are those reaching out to you, to, as it's right and it's okay, but to receive that and engage in that. I can't tell you, it's incredible. The friends or those that have become friends that have gone through things, and those that I haven't, uh, to be open to that. And that's not easy. I realize that's a very simple statement, but easier said than done type thing, but very important. And then I was delighted and surprised by the community that was uncovered by accident at the beginning. And then after experiencing that, being intentional and seeking out other opportunities.
In general, for all parents, and this doesn't have to be about Duchenne, it could be rare disease, it could be childhood, pediatric cancer, it could be anything unexpected that comes your way as a parent. What do you wish you would have known on diagnosis day that you do know now? What do you wish somebody could have told you or you would have understood?
That is a great question. And in the journey, there's a lot of things there that step by step. And so part of that would be, and was given to us, in fact, either maybe by yourself or others in that room that day, take one day at a time. And then I heard someone chime in right after that to say, take 1 minute at a time. And that is so true, because at the time when you're receiving that, and as you know, it's overwhelming. Everything crashes over you in those moments. And to take it that one step at a time for both sides of that. One, to receive it in that moment, and to acknowledge, and also to take that step forward to the next moment and seeking out that help along the way.
I want to ask you, what's your vision for your future? What do you see now for the future for your beautiful family? What are your hopes and dreams?
And it's something I can say with certainty, and I don't know what it'll exactly always look like, but that is to find joy and to have, in this case I'll be specific with Lucas, and it's true for the entire family, but to support them in finding the joy, and as we make those memories together as a family, and that's our focus, and as we lean into it and look forward to it, whatever that is, to be looking towards joy, and many times, hence part of gratitude in there, but seeking out those opportunities, because otherwise the time flies right by, and if you've not made those, that I think will hurt a lot. And so that's been something we've been intentional about and want to be even more so moving forward.
Thanks, Bill. One final question. So if you think about your life, and it was a book or a movie, what would the title be?
Oh, that's a good one. And also it's one of the you want to overthink when you're answering. Yes. Shine bright.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much. You are a gem. I'm so grateful for your generosity of, sharing your story and your wisdom and just the heart with which you open up to the world. And you are a gift to many, and I'm grateful to have you here today. Thank you for listening in. I hope this story doesn't end for you when the episode does. I hope you'll carry this with you and maybe sit with what this story means to you. I hope you'll lean into your own story with curiosity and compassion. And I hope this gave you a soft place to land today. Thank you to PTC Therapeutics, ITF Therapeutics, and Sarepta Therapeutics, who believe in the power of shared stories and helped us bring this episode to life with their generous support. Please share this with someone who might enjoy it or someone that you think might need it right now. That is how the beauty of storytelling multiplies. I'll see you next time.